Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Walker. First, I'm going to offer an apology. I've got an emergency leadership meeting in a while that I'm going to have to run out to, and I'll give the seat here over to Senator Baldwin. Let me start off with this. It goes without saying, I think, that many of us understand that at a time when we, have a major disease which has been under-discussed, underappreciated, that while we have put some federal funding and some good work has been done, much more needs to be done. So to my point, that's a given, all right? But what I want to go beyond that, and it's to ask all of you, starting with Dr. Harkins, is if I am an individual with long COVID, as people in this room are and people in another room are, the overflow room, give us some optimism here. Where do you think we can be going? What are we seeing? Any breakthroughs in terms of understanding the disease and in providing, in the reasonably short term, some treatments for people who are hurting very badly right now? Dr. Harkins?
Thank you. Well, I know we all want answers yesterday because patients are suffering. I think looking globally and with the studies that are going on currently in the U.S., we are finding answers. We are finding trends. We are clustering patients into different subgroups. However, this is really complex, and as my colleagues have mentioned, it affects every organ system. All different cells are involved, and so trying to come up with a one-size-fits-all is not going to work. And so I think we're learning more about muscle dysfunction in the post-exertional malaise patients, for example. Now, what we do with that information, there's actual structural damage that occurs post-exercise. So what we do with that information now will be critical in, what can we do to address that and improve their symptoms at the time, and educating providers so that the patients are heard and felt like they have a partner in this.
Thanks. Dr. Al-Ali?
We've made a lot of progress in understanding the biology of long COVID. We understand what happens in the brain, for example, in a lot of patients with long COVID: low cortisol level, low serotonin level, fusion of the neurons that actually disrupt cognition, and neuroinflammation or inflammation in the brain, and some structural abnormalities in the brain that have been documented in people following SARS-CoV-2 infection. So I would understand, that's really only to talk about the brain. There's a lot of literature also on the heart and other aspects. We made a lot of improvement or progress in understanding the biology of long COVID. And also we do understand quite a bit the epidemiology of long COVID. We understand that, vaccines work, reduce the risk of long COVID. We understand that to some extent antivirals also reduce the risk of long COVID. We also understand that reinfection raises the risk of long COVID. So all of that understanding should feed into some optimism that we've made some progress. I think the major we note lack of progress in clinical trials. As I indicated, they're too slow and too small to yield definitive answers. And really, for the person who is hurting from long COVID, they need that treatment yesterday. And we've, while we've made progress in understanding the biology and epidemiology of long COVID, we definitely need trials and at scale that match the urgency of the problem.
Dr. Brown?
Yes, I'd like to just reiterate what the other witnesses have said, that there's a lot that we understand about the biology. We do know that the clinical trials have been slow. There are some instances in which there have been issues with some of the treatments that are recommended for long COVID. In the early days, exercise was often recommended even for patients that without testing for post-exertional malaise. I think right now we're really in a phase where there are about, I think, 12 trials in the, that are registered in clinicaltrials.gov that are working on experimental medicines, and I think that we really need investment in this direction to really identify treatments that are working for patients.
Dr. Walker?
Yeah, to reiterate what many of the last panel mentioned, we've seen a lot of these patients that have really not been validated by their primary care providers or subspecialists, and that's because in our illness script as physicians, when we see a normal physical exam, we see a normal diagnostic workup, we're left with, oh, it seems like everything's okay, and clearly it's not. And so just to reiterate, understanding the pathobiological mechanisms not only helps us target medications, helps us understand the disease better, also provides credence to this disease disease. We can now point to something. This is a real disease. It cannot be refuted. There is scientific evidence of this. And so I think that's something that's really exciting, that gives us hope. But again, it gives us targets that we can use in drug trials.
Okay, I am assuming that my time is running out. I'm assuming that all of you believe that the federal government has got to play a much more active role with substantial sums of money for research, development, clinical trials, et cetera. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes.
No doubt.
All right. Senator Cassidy.
I will defer to Senator Murkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ranking